The galaxy had been silent for weeks. In the vast expanse of space, many planets waited for something to happen. But the people of Eloria were not just waiting, they were searching. They were searching for the Queen's daughter who had gone. Missing many years ago, her disappearance had broken the hearts of all, especially her mother, Queen Saria. Queen Saria was a powerful leader of the Elorian people. Her beauty and strength were unmatched, but her most cherished possession was her daughter, Princess Alira. Alira had been taken by enemy forces when she was just a child. The Queen had never stopped searching for her. She refused to believe her daughter was gone forever. She had heard nothing from Alira in so long, but that never stopped her from hoping. The loss had left a hole in the Queen's heart, a hole that no one could fill. But one day the Queen received news that made her heart race with hope. A small message came across the galaxy's communication lines. "We found her. She is alive." The message was from an unknown source. It gave only a brief description of where she might be. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The Queen knew this was her chance. With new hope, she sent out a call to the galaxy for help. She needed someone brave enough to go into the unknown and find her daughter. It wasn't an easy task. The place where the princess had last been seen was dangerous, filled with hostile creatures and far from any civilized world. Enter Captain Derek Reed, a human soldier known for his bravery and skill. He had heard stories of the Elorian Queen's grief and knew of the mission. Many had already refused to help, but something about the Queen's plight stirred something deep inside Derek. He knew this mission wouldn't be easy, but he also knew it was the right thing to do. Derek was no stranger to dangerous situations. He had fought on countless battlefields and completed many rescue missions, but this one was different. It wasn't about a paycheck or a medal. It was about saving someone who had been lost, someone who needed to be found. Derek was ready. Journey began. Derek's ship, a sleek human vessel designed for stealth and speed, cut through the stars toward the coordinates he had been given. He was alone. The Queen's people had offered him a team, but he had refused. This mission was his, and he wanted no distractions. As he approached the planet where Alira had been seen, Derek could feel the tension in the air. The planet was a strange one, dark and filled with thick forests that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air was heavy, and the sounds of unknown creatures echoed from the shadows. Derek landed his ship in a small clearing and prepared himself for what lay ahead. He grabbed his weapons blaster, knife, and a few other survival tools, and set off into the dense forest. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from anticipation. He had a mission to complete. He couldn't afford to let anything stop him. For days, Derek trekked through the wild forests. He fought off wild animals and avoided dangerous traps set by the planet's strange inhabitants. Each night, he camped in the dense trees, hoping that tomorrow would bring him closer to Alira, but each day was the same. Nothing. The trail grew colder with each passing hour. Derek was tired, and the alien landscape was beginning to get to him. But he refused to give up. Then, on the fourth day, something changed. Derek found a small clue, a piece of cloth, torn and stained. With dirt, he knelt beside it and ran his fingers over the fabric. The cloth was soft, like the kind of material the Elorian royal family used for their clothes. This was it. The princess had been here. She had left something behind. Derek took the cloth and examined the area closely. He noticed something else. Footprints, small ones leading deeper into the forest. They were fresh. Someone had passed through recently. His heart skipped a beat. This was the break he had been waiting for. He followed the footprints, moving carefully and quietly as he ventured deeper into the forest. The trees grew thicker and the air grew colder. The atmosphere was unsettling, but Derek's determination pushed him forward. He knew he was close, could feel it. Hours later, he reached a small clearing. At the center of it was a hidden stone structure, partially buried under vines and moss. It looked old, ancient even, but there were signs of life footprints leading in and out of the building. Derek's pulse quickened. This was it. He crept closer, careful not to make a sound. As he neared the entrance, he saw movement. There, At the door stood a figure, weak, tired, but alive. It was Alira. She was sitting on the ground, looking at the sky as though waiting for something. She looked nothing like the princess of legend. Her clothes were tattered, her hair long and tangled, but there was no mistaking her. This was the daughter of Queen Saria. Derek took a step forward, his heart racing. He wasn't sure how to approach her, but he knew he couldn't let this moment slip away. Alira. The princess turned, her eyes wide with disbelief. For a moment, she just stared at him, unsure if she could trust her eyes. Then, as if recognizing something familiar, she whispered, "Who are you?" Derek smiled and took a step closer. "I'm here to take you home." Tears welled up in Alira's eyes, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. She had never given up on her, and now someone was here to bring her back. "I'm coming home," Alira whispered, almost to herself. The reunion was close, but the journey was far from over. Derek knew they had to leave quickly. They weren't alone on this planet, and danger was always lurking. But for now, in that small clearing, Alira's world had changed. She was no longer lost. Derek helped her to her feet, and together they began the journey back. The first step had been taken. Now, it was time to bring the princess home to the queen. Derek's heart raced as he led Princess Alira through the dense forest. The days of traveling had taken their toll on both of them. Alira, though grateful to be rescued, was weak and exhausted. Her skin was pale, and her body seemed fragile. After so many years of captivity, Derek had noticed how quiet she had become since the moment he found her. She wasn't just physically drained. Emotionally, she seemed distant, so part of her had given up on ever escaping. Derek knew they had to hurry. The longer they stayed in one place, the greater the danger. As much as he wanted to rest, he kept pushing forward. They could not afford to waste time. Alira had been missing for too long, and now that she was found, Derek had no intention of letting anything stop them from reaching safety. As they walked, the thick trees loomed over, them blocking out the sun. The atmosphere felt suffocating, and the strange noises of the alien wildlife only added to the tension. Every crack of a twig underfoot made Derek's hand tighten around the handle of his blaster. He kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. Knowing that their enemies could still be lurking in the shadows, Alira, walking beside him, glanced nervously at the trees around them. "I don't know how you can walk so easily in this place," she said quietly. "Everything feels so wrong." Derek gave her a reassuring smile. "I've been in worse places," he replied. "Just stay close, and we'll make it through. You're not alone anymore." Alira's eyes softened, and for a moment she seemed to believe him. But the weight of her years in captivity had left scars that couldn't be erased by words alone. Derek could see the pain in her eyes. Still, he refused to let that stop him. He had a mission to complete, and he wouldn't fail now. After what seemed like hours of walking, they finally reached a small clearing in the forest. Derek stopped, scanning the area for any signs of danger. He knew they were getting close to the ship, the one that would take them back to the Queen's fleet. He had memorized the coordinates, but something didn't feel right. The hair on the back of his neck stood up as he looked around, sensing that something was wrong. "Stay here, Derek," whispered to Alira. "I'll check the area first." Alira nodded, her eyes wide with trust. Derek moved carefully, using every ounce of his training to stay hidden in the shadows. As he crept through the tall grass, he noticed something strange: footprints. Not the ones from Alira or himself, but fresh tracks. They looked like they belonged to several beings. He knelt down to inspect them, his mind racing. These weren't just ordinary footprints. They were the marks of their enemies, the ones who had held Alira captive all these years. Derek's heart skipped a beat. They weren't alone. They had to leave, and they had to leave now. He quickly made his way back to Alira, his voice low but urgent. "We need to move. They're close." Alira's eyes widened, and for the first time since he'd found her, a look of fear crossed her face. "Who's close? Who's following us?" "I don't know," Derek said, "but we can't stay here. It might be too strong for us to handle if we don't get to the ship quickly." Without waiting for another word, Derek grabbed her arm. gently but firmly, guiding her toward the edge of the clearing. He kept moving, making sure they stayed low and quiet. The fresh tracks were enough to tell him that danger was near. Whoever was following them was looking for Illyra. They wouldn't stop until they had her back. As they moved through the dense forest, Illyra kept glancing over her shoulder, as though expecting an attack at any moment. Derek kept his senses sharp, scanning every shadow, every movement in the trees. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. After a while, they reached the edge of the forest, where the dark expanse of the planet's wild terrain ended and the open plains began. Derek could see their destination in the distance, a small outpost where his ship had been hidden, ready for their escape. But as they approached, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. "It was too late to run. They've found us," Derek said quietly, his hand going to the blaster at his side. He had expected this. They had no choice but to fight. Illyra looked terrified, but Derek's calm presence seemed to soothe her. He couldn't let her fear control him. He turned to face her, his eyes serious. "Listen to me, Illyra. We don't have much time. When I say run, you run. Don't stop for anything. Understand?" Illyra nodded quickly, fear in her eyes, but determination in her heart. She trusted Derek, and that trust gave her the strength to follow him. The first enemy appeared from the edge of the forest, a tall figure with sharp, angular features and dark armor that blended with the shadows. Derek didn't hesitate. He fired a shot from his blaster, hitting the figure square in the chest. The enemy dropped to the ground without a sound, but more were coming. Derek heard the rustle of movement behind him and knew that this was just the beginning. He had to get Illyra to the ship, and he had to do it fast. "Run, now," Derek shouted. Without looking back, Illyra sprinted toward the open plains, her legs shaking, but her will stronger than ever. Derek fired another shot, taking down another enemy, but he knew they couldn't afford to stay and fight for long. He caught up with Illyra quickly, keeping her safe as they reached the ship. The moment they boarded, Derek sealed the door behind them and powered up the engine. "We're leaving this place," Derek said. His voice filled with relief. Illyra collapsed into a seat, exhausted but safe for the moment. "Thank you," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I thought I was going to die in that place, but you found me." Derek nodded, his mind already racing. They had survived, but the hardest part was still to come, returning her to her mother, the Queen. The journey wasn't over yet, and he knew the enemy would not give up so easily. As the ship lifted off into the sky, Derek's gaze hardened. He was ready for whatever came next. They had made it this far, and nothing was going to stop him from bringing Illyra home. The stars stretched out before them as the small ship soared through the galaxy. Illyra sat quietly beside Derek, her face pale, but her eyes filled with something she hadn't felt in years' hope. The journey from the alien planet had been long, and her body still ached from the captivity she had endured. But in that moment, as the ship cut through the void, she allowed herself to believe in a future where she would be reunited with her mother. Derek glanced at her occasionally, but his focus remained on the controls. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a protector now, carrying the weight of a mission far bigger than any battle he had faced. The Queen's daughter was safe for now, but they weren't out of danger yet. "Do you think they'll come after us?" Illyra asked quietly, breaking the silence that had hung in the air for the past several hours. Derek didn't need to ask who she meant. The enemies who had taken her, the ones who wanted her back, were still out there. Even though they had escaped the planet, he knew they wouldn't give up that easily. There was always a bigger force behind them, and it would stop at nothing to recapture her. "I'm sure they'll try," Derek replied, his voice steady. "But we're not going back. We're heading straight to the Queen's fleet. You'll be safe there." Illyra nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The quiet hum of the engine suddenly felt too loud, and the empty space around them seemed vast and endless. A sudden shiver ran down her spine. She had been running from enemies for so long it was hard to believe they had truly escaped. As if on cue, a loud alarm blared through the ship, sending a shock of panic through Illyra's body. Derek's hand moved swiftly to the control panel, his face grim as he studied the readouts. "They've found us," he said under his breath. "Hold on tight." Before Elira could react, the ship jolted violently. The lights flickered, and the sound of something heavy hitting the ship echoed from the rear. Derek cursed under his breath, hitting buttons on the control panel to stabilize their course. "Are you okay?" he asked Elira, his eyes never leaving the controls. "I'm fine," she replied, gripping the seat tightly as the ship shook. But she couldn't help the rising fear in her chest. She had hoped they were beyond the reach of the people who had kept her captive. But now it seemed that hope was slipping through her fingers. "Stay low and keep your head down, Derek," ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "We need to lose them, and we need to do it fast." The ship rocked again as another blast hit them from behind. Derek cursed again, slamming his fist on the dashboard. The enemy had fired some kind of energy weapon, and it was slowly draining their shields. "They wouldn't survive another few hits at this rate. We've got to get out of their range," Derek said. "I'll need you to trust me," Lyra nodded. Although the pit in her stomach tightened with uncertainty, she had trusted Derek to find her, and now she had to trust him again. She had no choice. Derek engaged the ship's speed boosters, and they shot forward, narrowly avoiding another blast. The vastness of space stretched before them, but in the distance, Elira could see a group of ships moving toward them at incredible speed. The enemy was closing in. "We won't make it to the Queen's fleet in time," Derek said, his voice tight with urgency. "But there's another way. Hold on." Without warning, Derek steered the ship toward a nearby asteroid field. Lyra gasped as the ship veered sharply, dodging incoming blasts and narrowly missing massive rocks that floated in their path. The ship rattled as another blast hit the hull, but Derek didn't slow down. He knew the asteroid field was their only chance. "We'll lose them in here," he said, his hands steady on the controls as he expertly navigated through the dense field of asteroids. The rocks seemed to come from every direction, each one larger than the last. The ship's shields flickered as debris scratched against the metal surface, but Derek didn't let up. Every second counted. Elira's heart was pounding, her breath coming in shallow gasps as she watched the chaos unfold around them. The asteroid field was a dangerous maze, and every turn could be their last. But Derek knew this place well. Had flown through asteroid fields many times before. This was his chance to outmaneuver their attackers. The enemy ships followed closely, their weapons firing relentlessly. Derek gritted his teeth as he twisted the ship around a massive asteroid, feeling the strain as the engines pushed the ship to its limits. But just as he thought they might escape, an enemy ship appeared directly ahead. "Blocking their path, they've cut us off," Derek muttered under his breath. Elira's eyes widened. What now? Derek's mind raced. The ship's speed was their greatest asset, but now it was their greatest risk. If they didn't act fast, they'd be sitting targets for the enemy. "There's a way," Derek said, his voice determined. "I'll need to make a quick turn. It'll be risky, but it's our best shot." He didn't wait for Elira to respond. With a sharp pull on the controls, Derek sent the ship into a tight, spiraling turn, heading straight for a small opening between two massive asteroids. Elira's breath caught in her throat as the ship barely squeezed through the gap, the hull scraping against the rocky surfaces. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for impact. But then, as quickly as it began, the ship shot through the gap and into the open space beyond. They were free, at least for now. Derek didn't relax, though. Quickly scanned the stars around them, making sure the enemy hadn't followed them into the open space. The enemy ships were still hovering outside the asteroid field, hesitant to follow them into the danger zone. Derek allowed himself a brief sigh of relief. "We made it," he said, his voice a mix of exhaustion and relief. Elira turned to him, her eyes wide. "That was incredible. I thought we were done for." Derek smiled briefly, but his eyes were still scanning the horizon. "We're not out of the woods yet, but we're a lot closer than we were." Lyra nodded, her heart still racing. Had never been so close to death in her life, and yet here she was, still alive, still free. She turned her eyes toward the stars, toward the unknown. She knew her journey wasn't over. But for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt in so long: hope. The ship soared through the vastness of space, the stars stretching out before them like endless diamonds. Derek's hands moved confidently over the controls, but his mind never stopped racing. The escape through the asteroid field had bought them some time, but he knew that the enemy wasn't far behind. They had to keep moving, and they had to stay ahead. Alira sat quietly beside him, her eyes distant as she stared out the small window. Her face was pale, still showing signs of exhaustion, but she had finally allowed herself to rest. For the first time since Derek found her, she wasn't thinking about her past, about the years of captivity. She was thinking about the future. The future where she would be with her mother again. "Are we close?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Derek glanced at her, his expression softening. "We're getting there, but we need to stay sharp. The enemy will follow us, and they won't stop until they have you back." Alira nodded, her eyes clouded with worry. She had spent so many years trapped in a world of fear and loneliness, and now, even though she was free, the thought of being captured again haunted her. She had to get back to her mother. She had to make it home. They had a long journey ahead. The Queen's fleet was still far away, and Derek knew they had to move fast. He checked the ship's fuel levels and navigational charts. There was a faster route, one that would take them through a region of space that was known for being dangerous, but it was the only way they could make it in time. If they didn't reach the Queen's fleet soon, they would be caught. "We need to take the shortcut," Derek said, his voice steady. "It's risky, but it's our best option." Alira looked at him, her brow furrowed. "What kind of shortcut?" Derek's fingers hovered over the controls. "There's a nebula up ahead, one that's known for its strong electromagnetic fields. It's dangerous, but if we can get through it quickly, we'll be out of the enemy's range." Alira bit her lip, uncertainty filling her. "How do you know we'll make it?" Derek turned to her, his gaze serious but reassuring. "I've been through worse, trust me." There was a moment of silence before Alira nodded. She trusted him. She had no choice but to. With a flick of his wrist, Derek adjusted their course toward the nebula. The ship's engines hummed in response, and they began the descent into the swirling clouds of gas and dust. The nebula looked like a massive storm in the distance, dark and foreboding. As they drew closer, Alira could feel the air grow thick, the ship's systems struggling against the pull of the electromagnetic forces. The ship's lights flickered, and the control panel beeped with warning signals. Derek's hands moved quickly, making adjustments to keep the ship on course. "Hold tight," Derek said, his voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around them. "It's going to get rough." Alira gripped the edge of her seat, her heart pounding in her chest. The nebula was unlike anything she had ever seen. The clouds of gas glowed with strange colors, shifting and swirling in patterns that seemed almost alive. The ship rocked as they entered the dense area of the nebula, and Alira could feel the turbulence rattling through her bones. "Derek, are you sure we can make it through this?" she asked, her voice shaky. "We have to," he replied. "Just trust me." The ship shuddered again, and the sounds of the electromagnetic fields intensified. The lights flickered on and off, and Alira could hear the hum of the ship's systems struggling to stay online. For a moment, she thought she could feel the ship being pulled in different directions by the energy in the nebula. But Derek's steady hands never wavered as he fought to keep them on track. A sudden jolt threw Alira forward, and she gasped in surprise. The ship had hit something. She looked around, her eyes wide with panic. But Derek was already on top of it, adjusting the controls and stabilizing the ship. "We're not out of the woods yet," Derek muttered to himself, his brow furrowed in concentration. Alira's mind raced. The nebula was dangerous, yes, but the real danger wasn't the nebula, was the enemy. They could still be out there, lurking, waiting for them to slip up. She had to stay strong. She had to get home. Another sharp pull of the ship sent Alira's stomach into her throat, but Derek expertly pulled them through. The ship's systems were barely holding up, but they were still flying. The stars outside the window began to clear, and the deep swirling colors of the nebula began to fade into the darkness of space. "We're through," Derek said, a sigh of relief escaping his lips. We made it. Lyra let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She leaned back in her seat, her muscles aching from the tension of the past few hours. She looked at Derek, who was already focused on the next steps. He had saved them again. Thank you, she whispered. Derek didn't look at her, but his lips curved into a small, tired smile. We're not there yet, but we're closer, and that's what matters. Alira looked out the window, watching, as the nebula finally faded behind them. The vastness of space stretched out before them again, calm and quiet. They were free, at least for now. But the road ahead was still uncertain. Derek, Alira began, her voice soft but determined. When we get to my mother, ... what will happen? Derek's eyes flicked to her, his expression serious. When we get there, your mother will be waiting. I'll make sure she's not alone. We'll make sure she's safe. Alira nodded slowly. She believed him. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to think of that moment, the moment when she would be reunited with the Queen. Her mother would finally have her back, and for that she would do anything as they sailed deeper into space. Closer to the Queen's fleet, the weight of their mission pressed down on both of them. But despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, Alira couldn't help but feel that she was on the edge of something beautiful. She was going home. The ship drifted silently through the endless space, the vast blackness of the galaxy stretching out before them. The stars twinkled, distant and cold, but for Alira, the world outside felt warmer than it had in years. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to dream of home, but now, as she sat beside Derek, she allowed herself to think of the moment when she would finally be reunited with her mother. It had been a long journey, filled with dangers and close calls, but Alira could feel the weight of those dangers starting to lift. They were so close now. The Queen's fleet was within reach, and she could almost imagine her mother waiting, standing at the front of her ships, ready to welcome her back. Derek. Alira's voice was soft, her eyes fixed on the stars outside the window. You think she'll be happy to see me? Derek didn't immediately answer, kept his eyes on the controls, his hands steady as the ship hummed softly beneath them. Alira could sense the care he took in piloting the ship, the calmness that he always showed, no matter how much danger they were in. She envied that calmness. I'm sure she will, Derek said after a pause. No one has ever been as dedicated to finding you as she has. She's probably counting the days until she sees you again. Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. I hope you're right. I've spent so many years thinking about her, wondering if she would ever find me, if I would ever get to see her again. Derek nodded, his expression serious but kind. And now you will. But I'm not letting you go until I know you're safe. Not after everything. Lyra turned her head to look at him, and for a moment their eyes met. There was an understanding between them, one that neither of them had ever expected to form. Derek had risked everything to find her, and in doing so, he had become more than just her rescuer. He had become her protector, her friend. In this strange and distant galaxy, he was the one constant she had. She wasn't alone anymore. I won't forget what you've done for me, Derek, Alira said quietly. I'll never be able to repay. You don't have to, Derek replied. You're going home. It's all that matters. The ship moved steadily toward its destination. Alira could feel the excitement building in her chest, even as her thoughts swirled with doubt. Would her mother still recognize her? After all these years, would the Queen see the little girl she had lost? Or would she see a stranger, a woman shaped by time and hardship? Derek, Lyra started, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. There was so much she wanted to say, but the emotions were too heavy to express all at once. You don't have to say anything, Derek said, turning his head slightly to look at her. I know how you feel. It's okay. Alira nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She hadn't realized how much she had needed someone to understand. Someone who wouldn't push her to talk before she was ready. The ship's sensors began to beep, signaling that they were approaching the Queen's fleet. Derek leaned forward, adjusting the controls as a massive fleet of Valorian ships appeared on the horizon. They were a sight to behold, sleek and powerful, symbol of the Queen's strength and resilience. The moment Alira had waited for her. The entire life was now within her grasp. The fleet was close, and the Queen's flagship was unmistakable at the center, its towering silhouette cutting through the stars. Alira could see the crew bustling on the decks, preparing for their arrival. Derek's voice broke through her thoughts. "Get ready. We're almost there." Alira's heart pounded in her chest. She could barely breathe as the ship approached the flagship. The familiar sight of the Queen's ship filled her with both excitement and anxiety. The memories of her childhood came rushing back, the warmth of her mother's voice, the safety of her embrace. Would she still be the same? Would they still be able to connect after all this time? The communication system buzzed to life, and a voice echoed through the ship. "This is Queen Saria's fleet. Identify yourself." Derek's voice was steady. As he responded, "This is Captain Derek Reed of the United Earth Forces. I have Princess Alira aboard. We're requesting permission to land." The silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever. Alira held her breath, her hands trembling in her lap. Finally, the voice on the other end spoke again, this time filled with emotion. "Alira?" the voice said, and Alira could hear the unmistakable tremor of hope in it. "Is that really you?" Alira's throat closed up, and for a moment she couldn't speak. She was afraid to speak, afraid that if she did, this beautiful moment would shatter. Derek glanced at her, a reassuring smile on his face. "It's time," he said quietly. Alira swallowed hard, and then, with all the courage she could muster, she spoke into the comm system. "Yes, it's me, Mother. I'm home." There was a long pause, and then a choked sob came through the speakers. "Alira. My daughter, ... Alira's heart swelled with emotion. She closed her eyes, letting the tears come as she allowed herself to finally feel what she had kept locked away for so long. The pain, the fear, the longing, all of it was finally being washed away in that one moment. Her mother had never stopped searching for her, and now they were finally together again. The ship descended toward the landing pad on the Queen's flagship. As they touched down, Alira's hands shook, but she didn't care. She was about to see her mother again. The moment she had dreamed of was finally happening. Derek powered down the ship's systems and turned to Alira. "You're ready?" he said, his voice soft but filled with pride. Alira nodded, unable to speak for the lump in her throat. She opened the hatch, and before she could take another step, a figure appeared at the door of the ship. The Queen. Her mother, Alira. Queen Saria cried, rushing toward her daughter. The two women embraced, holding each other as if the world itself might pull them apart again. Alira closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the warmth of her mother's embrace, the safe, comforting presence that had always been there, even when they were apart. For the first time in years, Alira felt truly home. The reunion between Queen Saria and her daughter Alira was everything both of them had dreamed of. The moment Alira stepped onto the Queen's ship, she felt as if she had entered another world, one full of warmth, comfort, and safety. The air seemed lighter, the space around her more welcoming. After years of fear, pain, and loneliness, Alira was finally home. But while the Queen's fleet was filled with joy, Derek remained focused. His mission wasn't complete. The enemy who had taken Alira was still out there, waiting. They knew he had been the one to rescue the princess, and they would come for him. Derek had no illusions about what was coming next, as he stood at the edge of the ship's landing bay. Watching the reunion unfold, he couldn't help but feel a little out of place. He was an outsider here, in a world of royalty, power, and politics. His job had been to save the princess, and now that she was safely back with her mother, his role seemed to have ended, but Queen Saria wouldn't hear of it. "Captain Derek Reed," the Queen said, her voice warm but firm as she approached him. "You have done what no one else could. You have brought my daughter back to me. You are not just a hero to me. You are a part of my family now. I owe you everything." Derek looked down, feeling the weight of her words. "I just did my job, Your Majesty," he replied. "Nothing more." "No," Saria insisted. "You did more than that. You gave me hope when there was none. You brought light back into my life. For that, I will forever be grateful." Elira, who had been standing nearby, stepped forward and looked up at Derek with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but full of emotion. "I can never repay you for what you've done. I was lost, but you found me. I will always be grateful for that." Derek looked at the two of them, mother and daughter, reunited at last. The bond between them was undeniable. And though he had no family of his own, he felt something shift inside him. He had always been alone in the galaxy, a soldier without roots. But now, standing before the Queen and the Princess, he felt like he was part of something much bigger than himself. "You're welcome," Derek said, his voice steady, though his heart was heavy with emotion. "I'm just glad you're home." For a long moment, there was nothing but silence as the three of them stood together. The Queen and her daughter had been through so much, but now, in this quiet moment, they were free of the pain that had haunted them for years. But even as Elira and the Queen embraced again, Derek couldn't shake the feeling that danger was still near. The enemy wouldn't stop now. They would come for Elira. They would come for him. The Queen must have sensed Derek's unease because she spoke again, her tone now serious. "Captain Reed, I know you've been through a lot, but I need to ask something of you, Saria," said her voice steady. "The war is far from over. The people who took my daughter are still out there, and they will not stop until they have her again. Will you help me protect her?" Derek looked at the Queen and then at Elira. He knew the answer already. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to walk away now. He had promised to protect Elira, and that promise still stood. "I'll do whatever it takes, Your Majesty," Derek said firmly. "I won't let anyone harm her again." The Queen nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Captain. You have proven yourself to be more than a soldier. You are a true ally of our people." Elira, her face glowing with happiness, turned to Derek. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she said quietly, her eyes filled with warmth. "You've given me my life back." Derek smiled softly. "I'm just glad I could help." The Queen motioned for them to follow her as she led them through the corridors of her ship. "We have much to discuss," she said. "I need to know everything about our enemies and how we can best prepare for what's coming next." As they walked together, Derek felt a sense of calm settling over him. He had done his part. But now, there was more to do. Together with the Queen and Elira, he would face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were stronger as a team, and Derek had come to realize that he wasn't alone anymore. He had found a new purpose, a new family. Hours later, they gathered in the Queen's war room. Maps of the galaxy were spread out across the table, and several of the Queen's advisors were present. Derek sat beside the Queen and Elira, listening. As the plan began to take shape, "The enemy is strong," one of the Queen's generals said, his voice grave. "But they are divided. We must strike quickly, before they can unite and attack us with full force." Saria nodded. "We will need every ship we have, every soldier, every resource. The enemy took my daughter from me, and now they will pay for that. We will not stop until they are destroyed." Derek could see the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had driven her to search for her daughter all these years. It was the fire that now burned in his own heart. He was no longer just a soldier. He was part of this fight, and he would give everything to help them win. Elira spoke up, her voice steady and filled with resolve. "My mother is right. You must stand together. The enemy thought they could take me and break our people, but they were wrong. We are stronger than they think. We will fight." Derek looked at the two women, mother and daughter, bound by love and shared strength. He had been a part of this journey, and he would continue to be. Together, they would face the future. The battle for their future had just begun.